Commander Jake Sullivan walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His black uniform stood out among the colorful robes and strange clothing of alien delegates. The chamber was huge, built inside a space station that orbited a giant gas planet. Hundreds of different alien species sat in floating seats that moved around the circular room. Jake had been to many council meetings before, but this one felt different. The air was thick with tension. Every alien eye, sensor, or whatever they used to see was watching him and his small human team. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked beside him. She was Earth's best expert on alien cultures and had been Jake's advisor for 5 years. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. Behind them walked Captain Amy Foster, commander of the U.S. Defiance, the Earth ship that brought them here. The 3 humans took their seats in the section marked for Earth. Around them, aliens whispered, clicked, buzzed, and made sounds that human ears could barely understand. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal. A few looked almost human, but had strange colors or extra arms. High Arbiter Zextai rose from her throne in the center of the chamber. She was one of the crystal beings, and her body glowed with soft blue light when she spoke. Her voice came through the translation devices that all species wore. "The Human Federation will answer for their crimes against galactic peace," she announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber, and all other sounds stopped. Jake stood up slowly. He had practiced this moment many times, but his heart was still beating fast. "What crimes do you accuse us of, High Arbiter? Your species has built military ships without council permission. You have expanded into the Outer Rim without following proper procedures. You have refused to share your new technologies with other species. These actions violate the harmony accords that all council members must follow." Lisa leaned close to Jake and whispered, "Remember, they want us to give up half our fleet. If we do that, our colonies will be defenseless against the Void Runners." Jake nodded. The Void Runners were space pirates who attacked weak settlements. They had been growing bolder lately, and the Council seemed unable or unwilling to stop them. Human colonies had suffered dozens of attacks in the past year alone. "High Arbiter," Jake said in a loud, clear voice, "humanity joined this council believing we would find partners in peace. Instead, we found bureaucrats who care more about forms and procedures than protecting innocent people." Angry sounds came from around the chamber. Several alien delegates stood up, waving arms, tentacles, or whatever appendages they had. "The Harmony Accords exist for good reasons," Zextai replied. "They prevent wars and keep peace between species. Tell that to families on New Boston Colony." Jake shot back. "Tell that to the children who died when Void Runners attacked, while we waited 3 months for council permission to send help." Amy Foster stepped forward. "The Council's rules are designed for species that think in centuries, not decades. Humans cannot wait for committee meetings while our people are murdered." Dr. Martinez activated her datapad and projected images into the center of the chamber. They showed destroyed human settlements, burned buildings, and worse things that made even some aliens look away. "In the past year," she said, "human colonies have requested council assistance 47 times. The council has responded to exactly 0 of these requests. Yet when we defend ourselves, you call us criminals." Zextai's crystal body pulsed with brighter light, a sign that she was angry. "The council has procedures for handling such matters. Humanity's impatience does not excuse breaking galactic law." "Your procedures are worthless," Jake said, his voice getting louder. "While you debate and form committees, real people die. We will not sacrifice our citizens for your bureaucracy." The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens were shouting, clicking, and making all kinds of noises. Some translation devices started smoking from overload. Through it all, Jake stood calm and straight. Zextai raised her arms, and the chamber slowly became quiet again. "The Council's decision is final. Humanity will surrender 50% of their military vessels within 1 galactic standard month. You'll also accept Council observers on all human worlds to ensure future compliance." Jake looked at Lisa and Amy. Both women nodded slightly. This was the moment they had prepared for, the moment that would change everything. "High Arbiter Zextai," Jake said, his voice carrying to every corner of the huge chamber. The United Earth Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We will no longer recognize your authority over human space or human affairs. The silence that followed was complete. Even the humming of the station's engines seemed to stop. Jake could see shock on every alien face that was capable of showing emotion. No species has ever left the Council, Zextai whispered, her voice barely audible through the translators. No species has ever needed to, Jake replied. Until now. An alien that looked like a giant spider scuttled forward. This is madness. Without the Council protection, humanity will be destroyed by pirates and raiders. Amy Foster smiled coldly. We'll take our chances. Jake turned to address the entire chamber. For 300 years, your council has maintained order through fear and control. You tell species what they can build, where they can go, how they can live. Well, humanity chooses a different path. We choose freedom. The human delegation began walking toward the exit. Behind them, the chamber exploded into argument again. Aliens were shouting at each other in dozens of languages. Some were demanding military action against Earth. Others were calling for negotiations. As they reached the doors, Zextai's voice rang out one more time. You will regret this decision. Humans! The galaxy is a dangerous place for those who stand alone. Jake paused and turned back. High Arbiter, we've been alone since the day we joined your council. The only difference now is that we admit it. The doors closed behind them with a deep, final sound. On the ship back to Earth, Amy sent coded messages to every human fleet and colony. The messages were simple. Operation Exodus begins now. All ties are cut. We stand alone. Jake sat in his cabin, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's first and greatest world. Soon, it would be the center of an independent human civilization. The thought scared him, but it also filled him with hope. Lisa knocked on his door and entered. Do you think we did the right thing? Jake continued staring at the stars. Ask me in 100 years. If humanity still exists and is still free, then we did the right thing. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying the news that would shake the galaxy. Behind them, the council chamber was still in chaos, as thousands of alien delegates tried to understand what had just happened. For the first time in galactic history, a species had chosen independence over security. The consequences would echo across the stars for generations to come. 6 months had passed since Jake Sullivan walked out of the council chamber. The galaxy was learning what it meant when humans said they were done with politics. Governor Ben Hayes stood on the observation deck of New Seattle Station. The massive space station had been humanity's largest trading post in council space. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, it was home to 3 million humans and had been the center of trade between Earth and dozens of alien worlds. Now it was being evacuated. The last transport leaves in 4 hours, said Maria Santos, Ben's deputy governor. She held a data pad showing the evacuation numbers. We're ahead of schedule. Ben watched through the thick windows as huge cargo ships loaded the last pieces of human civilization from the station. Factories, homes, schools, hospitals. Everything was being carefully packed and moved. The humans were taking it all with them. 200 years of building, Ben said quietly. 2 centuries of making this place into a real home. And we're just leaving. Not leaving, Maria corrected. Relocating. There's a difference. Ben smiled sadly. Maria was right, but it still hurt. New Seattle had been more than just a station. It had been proof that humans could work with aliens, that they could build something beautiful together in the cold darkness of space. But the council had made cooperation impossible. Governor called Lieutenant Tony Garcia from across the deck. Tony ran security for the station and had been working around the clock to keep the evacuation safe. We just got word from Earth Defense Command. The quantum communication network is online. Ben turned around quickly. The quantum network was humanity's secret project, something they had been building in hidden facilities for decades. Unlike normal space communications, quantum messages could not be intercepted or blocked by alien technology. Put it through, Ben ordered. A hologram appeared in the center of the observation deck. It showed President Ryan Cooper sitting in his office on Earth. Behind him, Ben could see the lights of Geneva, the city that served as Earth's capital. "Governor Hayes," the president said, "good to see you're on schedule." "Yes, sir. New Seattle will be empty in 4 hours." "What's the situation elsewhere?" President Cooper's face was serious. "Every human colony in council space is following the same plan. We're bringing everyone home to human-controlled systems. The council is upset." "I bet they are," Ben said with a bitter laugh. "How upset?" "They've frozen all human assets in council banks. They've banned human ships from using council navigation beacons. They've even stopped accepting our money for trade. They think they're punishing us." Maria stepped forward. "Mr. President, what they don't understand is that we've been preparing for this for 50 years. The president nodded. "Exactly. Dr. Alex Kim sends his regards. By the way, the Prometheus Research Institute has finished the final tests. Our new technology is ready." Ben felt a chill of excitement. Dr. Kim ran humanity's most secret research facility. For decades, human scientists have been developing technology that the council knew nothing about. Weapons, shields, engines, computers, all of it designed without alien input or oversight. "What about our defenses?" Ben asked. "The Luna shipyards are working at full capacity. We're producing ships faster than we ever have. Admiral Morrison's fleets are taking positions at every entry point to human space. If the council want to fight, they'll get one." Through the window, Ben could see the last civilian transport ship pulling away from New Seattle Station. Families who had lived here for generations were leaving their homes, carrying only what they could pack. But they weren't crying or complaining. They looked determined. "There's something else," President Cooper continued. "Our intelligence networks are picking up strange signals from the outer rim. The Void Runners are more active than ever. It's like they know something big is happening." Tony Garcia frowned. "Sir, could they be planning something? Maybe taking advantage of the chaos." "That's what we're worried about. Keep your security teams alert during the evacuation. The last thing we need is a pirate attack while we're moving our people." The hologram flickered and disappeared. Ben turned back to window. New Seattle Station would be empty soon, but it wouldn't stay that way. The council would probably give it to some alien species as a reward for loyalty. The thought made him angry. "Governor," Maria said softly, "do you think we're making a mistake? Giving up everything we built out here?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. Then he pointed to a small ship docking at the station. "You see that transport? It's carrying the Chun family. Old Man Chun has been running a noodle shop on this station for 40 years. His grandchildren were born here. This is the only home they've ever known." "I know the family," Maria said. "Chun came to see me yesterday. You know what he told me? He said he'd rather start over as a free man than live as a comfortable slave. His exact words." Maria nodded slowly. "The council never understood us, did they?" "No," Ben replied. "They saw humans as just another species to control. They never realized that we'd rather lose everything than give up our freedom." An alarm sounded through the station. Tony checked his communicator. "That's the final boarding call. All civilians are accounted for. The station is officially empty except for essential personnel." Ben took one last look around the observation deck. This room had hosted parties, business meetings, cultural exchanges with dozens of alien species. Human children had pressed their faces against these same windows, watching the stars and dreaming of adventure. "Shut down all non-essential systems," he ordered. "We leave nothing useful behind." The lights in the commercial district went dark. The parks and recreation areas powered down. Even the artificial gravity in the residential areas was turned off. If the council wanted New Seattle Station, they would get an empty shell. "Transport is ready for departure," Tony reported. "Our security team has done a final sweep. The station is clear." Ben, Maria, and Tony walked through the empty corridors toward the docking bay. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. It felt like walking through a tomb. But Ben didn't feel sad anymore. He felt proud. Every human was leaving voluntarily. No one had been forced to abandon their home. They were choosing independence over comfort, freedom over security. As their transport ship pulled away from New Seattle Station, Ben got his first look at the defensive platforms that had been built in secret around the human solar systems. Massive structures bristling with weapons and shields, all powered by technology that the Council had never seen. Beautiful, aren't they? Maria said, following his gaze. Terrifying is more like it, Ben replied. I hope we never have to use them. Do you think the Council will try to force us back? Ben shrugged. Maybe, but if they do, they're going to learn something about humanity that we've kept hidden for 3 centuries. What's that? Ben smiled, and for the first time in months, it was not a sad smile. That we're much more dangerous when we're united than when we're divided. The Council is about to discover what happens when you corner a species that knows how to fight. The transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the last humans away from Council territory. Behind them, New Seattle Station hung silent and dark, a monument to the end and era. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out at dozens of human settlements. The greatest voluntary evacuation in galactic history was nearly complete. Humanity was going home, and they were taking all their knowledge, skills, and secrets with them. The Council would soon realize that they had made a terrible mistake, but by then it would be too late to fix it. The attack came without warning. High Arbiter Zextai was reviewing reports in her private chamber when alarms began screaming throughout the Council station. Her crystalline body immediately shifted to a deeper blue, the color of fear among her species. Report, she commanded as her assistant. A floating sphere-shaped being rushed into the room. Centauri Prime is under attack, the assistant said, its electronic voice filled with panic. Massive fleet signatures. Unknown technology. The planetary defense grid is failing. Zextai felt something she had never experienced in her 300 years of life. Genuine terror. Centauri Prime was not just another world. It was the military headquarters of the Galactic Council, home to their most advanced weapons and strongest defenses. If Centauri Prime could fall, nowhere in the galaxy was safe. Who is attacking? She asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. The Void Runners, High Arbiter. But their ships, they're different. Stronger. They're using weapons we've never seen before. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kate Morrison sat in her command chair aboard the UES Independence. She had been Jake Sullivan's second-in-command for years before humanity left the Council. Now she led the Colonial Navy, humanity's new military force. Admiral called her communications officer. We're receiving emergency broadcasts from across Council space. The Void Runners are hitting targets everywhere. Kate frowned. This didn't make sense. The Void Runners were pirates and raiders. They attacked weak colonies and trading ships, not major military installations. They didn't have the strength for this kind of assault. Show me the tactical data, she ordered. Holographic displays filled the bridge with information. The attacks were coordinated, hitting Council military bases, shipyards, and command centers all at the same time. The Void Runner fleets were using formation tactics and advanced weapons that pirates shouldn't have. Ma'am, said Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia, who had transferred from New Seattle Station to serve on Kate's staff. These aren't random raids. This is a full military campaign. Kate studied the data more carefully. Something was wrong with the enemy ship signatures. The Void Runner vessels looked different from their usual crude, cobbled-together pirate ships. These were sleek, powerful, and disturbingly familiar. Tony, run an analysis on those enemy weapon signatures. Compare them to our database. Tony's fingers flew over his control panel. A few seconds later, his face went pale. Admiral, you need to see this. The main display showed a comparison between the Void Runner weapons and various human technologies. The matches were too close to be coincidence. They're using modified human tech, Kate said quietly. But how did they get it? Remember all those derelict ships we lost over the years? All the equipment we had to abandon when colonies were evacuated? The Council never let us go back to collect it. Kate felt sick. For decades, human settlements had been attacked by pirates and raiders. Sometimes they had to evacuate so quickly that they left behind ships, weapons, and technology. The Council had always said it was too dangerous to retrieve the equipment. Now she understood why. The Council hadn't wanted humans to collect their own property. They wanted to study it, Learn from it. Maybe even give it to others to keep humanity from becoming too powerful. But somehow, the Void Runners had gotten their hands on it instead. Admiral, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving a priority message from Europa Station. It's from Dr. Martinez." Kate activated the secure channel. Lisa Martinez appeared on screen, looking tired and worried. She was now Earth's top intelligence analyst, using her knowledge of alien cultures to help humanity understand what was happening in the galaxy. "Kate, we have a problem," Lisa said without any greeting. "The Void Runner attacks aren't random. They're specifically targeting Council military assets and avoiding civilian populations." "That's unusual for pirates," Kate replied. "It gets worse. Our deep space sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the galaxy. Something big is coming, and the Void Runners might just be clearing the way for it." Before Kate could respond, another alarm sounded on the bridge. "Admiral," Tony called out, "we're receiving a distress signal from Kepler for 38C. It's Colonel Garcia, no relation," he added with a weak smile. Kate opened the channel. The image was shaky and filled with static, but she could see Colonel Rodriguez Garcia in his Marine combat armor. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky. "This is Kepler Station," the colonel said, his voice strained. "We are under heavy attack by Void Runner forces. They're using human weapons against us. Repeat, they're using our own technology. Rodriguez, this is Admiral Morrison. What's your status?" "We're holding them off, but barely. Ma'am, these aren't the same pirates we've been fighting. They're organized, well-equipped, and they know our tactics. It's like fighting ourselves." Kate made a quick decision. "All ships, prepare for emergency jump to Kepler for 38C. We're going to help our people." "Admiral," Tony said carefully, "Kepler Station is in Council space. Officially, we're not supposed to be there." Kate smiled grimly. "Officially, we're not part of the Council anymore. Our only obligation is to human lives." The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the battle. But as they traveled, Kate couldn't stop thinking about Lisa's warning. If the Void Runners were just scouts for something bigger, then the galaxy was about to face a threat unlike anything in its history. On Kepler, for 38C, Colonel Garcia and his Marines were giving the Void Runners an education in human warfare. The pirates had expected an easy victory against an isolated outpost. Instead, they found themselves fighting soldiers who had trained for exactly this kind of battle. "Third platoon, flank left." Garcia shouted into his communicator. "Use the ravine for cover. Second platoon, hold the center, but be ready to fall back to secondary positions." The Marines moved like clockwork, using tactics that had been refined in hundreds of battles across human space. They didn't fight in the rigid formations that Council military forces preferred. Instead, they adapted constantly, using the terrain and their enemies' expectations against them. "Colonel," called Sergeant Lisa Kim, his communications specialist, "the Void Runners are regrouping for another assault. But, sir, their weapons are definitely based on human designs." Garcia ducked as enemy fire scorched the air above his head. "Then we know their weaknesses better than they do. Pass the word. Standard anti-armor tactics, but watch for modifications." The battle raged for hours. The Void Runners had superior numbers and heavy weapons, but the Marines had something more important. They knew how to think. Every time the enemy tried a new tactic, the humans adapted faster. When Admiral Morrison's fleet arrived, they found the battle still raging. But instead of desperate defenders barely holding on, they saw human Marines systematically destroying a force 3 times their size. "This is Admiral Morrison to Kepler Station. Do you need assistance?" Garcia's voice came back steady and confident. "Negative, Admiral. We have the situation under control. But you might want to stay and watch. These pirates are about to learn why you don't pick fights with Marines." Kate watched from her ship as the final phase of the battle unfolded. The Marines didn't just defeat the Void Runner attack. They annihilated it. Not a single enemy ship escaped. But the victory felt hollow. If this was just the beginning, if something worse was coming from beyond the galaxy, then humanity and the Council would need to work together to survive. The problem was, Kate wasn't sure either side was ready to admit that yet. As the human fleet prepared to return to their own territory, Kate received one more message. It was from High Arbiter Zextai herself, transmitted on an emergency council frequency. The message was simple. We were wrong. Please help us. Kate stared at the message for a long time before responding. When she finally did, her reply was even simpler. We'll consider it. The galaxy was changing, and humanity would have to decide what role they wanted to play in its future. The easy choice would be to stay isolated and let the council face its problems alone. But Kate had a feeling that easy choices were a luxury they could no longer afford. The emergency session of the Earth Assembly had been going for 6 hours, and President Ryan Cooper was getting tired of the arguing. The council made their choice when they demanded we surrender our fleet, Senator Karen Williams said from her seat in the opposition section. Now they want our help because their precious rules can't save them from real threats. Across the chamber, Admiral Kate Morrison stood to respond. She had returned to Earth after the battle at Kepler. For 38C, bringing with her disturbing intelligence about the growing crisis in Council space. Senator Williams is right that the Council treated us badly, Kate said. But we're not talking about politics anymore. We're talking about survival. Not just theirs, ours too. President Cooper activated the main display screen. Images from across the galaxy showed the devastation that was spreading through Council territory. Dozens of worlds had gone dark. Entire species were fleeing toward the galactic core, abandoning their home systems to an enemy they couldn't fight. The Void Runners have taken 17 major systems in the past month, Cooper said. But they're not stopping to occupy them. They're just destroying military assets and moving on. It's like they're clearing a path for something else. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood up from the scientific advisory section. She had been studying the attack patterns since the crisis began, looking for clues about what the Void Runners really wanted. Mr. President, may I present my findings to the Assembly? Cooper nodded, and Lisa walked to the center of the chamber. The display changed to show a map of the galaxy with red marks indicating Void Runner attacks. The pattern is clear, she said. They're not attacking randomly. Every target has been a military installation, a shipyard, or a communications hub. They're systematically destroying the Council's ability to coordinate a defense. Defense against what? Asked Senator Williams. Lisa pressed a button on her remote control. The display zoomed out to show the entire galaxy, plus the dark space beyond its edges. Massive red dot appeared in the intergalactic void, slowly moving toward the galaxy's outer rim. Our deep space sensors have detected these objects. They're huge. Each one is the size of a small moon. They're moving at significant sublight speed toward our galaxy. At current velocity, they'll reach the outer systems in approximately 18 months. The assembly chamber fell silent. Even Senator Williams looked shaken. What are they? Someone called out from the back. We don't know, Lisa admitted. But based on their size and the fact that the Void Runners are preparing the way for them, we have to assume they're hostile. If they reach the galaxy and find no organized resistance. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood what she meant. General Sam Turner, the architect of humanity's defensive systems, stood up. Even if we wanted to help the Council, could we make a difference? Our fleets are strong, but we're just one species. That's exactly why we can make a difference, Kate replied. The Council species have been fighting by their rules for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt. They line up their ships in pretty formations and shoot at each other until someone runs out of ammunition. And humans fight differently, President Cooper added. Exactly. We use tactics they consider too brutal. We adapt faster than they can keep up with. We're willing to take risks that their committees would debate for months. Senator Williams wasn't convinced. Admiral Morrison, you're asking us to save people who kicked us out of their club. Why should we risk human lives for species that treated us like criminals? Before Kate could answer, a new voice spoke from the visitors' gallery. Because it's the right thing to do. Everyone turned to see Commander Jake Sullivan walking down the steps toward the main floor. Jake had retired from active duty after humanity's withdrawal from the Council, but he was still one of the most respected voices in human space. Jake, President Cooper said, you weren't scheduled to speak today. No, sir, I wasn't. But I've been listening to this debate, and I think we're missing something important. Jake walked to the center of the chamber, where Lisa had been standing. He looked tired, but his voice was strong and clear. Senator Williams is right that the council treated us badly. Admiral Morrison is right that we might be the only ones who can help them. But there's a third point that nobody's mentioned. He paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of Earth's leaders. If we stand by and let the galaxy burn, what kind of people does that make us? We left the council because we believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard. Now the right thing is hard again. Are we going to abandon our principles just because the victims used to be our enemies? Senator Williams stood up. Commander Sullivan, with respect, principles don't bring back dead human soldiers. No, they don't, Jake agreed. But they're what make the soldiers' sacrifice meaningful. If we only help people who like us, if we only fight for causes that benefit us directly, then we're no better than the council bureaucrats we despised. The debate continued for another hour, but Jake's words had changed the mood in the chamber. When President Cooper finally called for a vote, the result was closer than expected, but clear. Humanity would offer assistance to the Galactic Council. 2 days later, Jake found himself back in space, standing on the bridge of the UES Liberation. He had come out of retirement to serve as humanity's special envoy to the Council. It felt strange to be wearing a uniform again. Sir, called Lieutenant Tony Garcia, who had requested transfer to serve under Jake again. We're receiving a transmission from the Council station. Put it through. High Arbiter Zextai appeared on the main screen. Her crystalline body looked dimmer than Jake remembered, and there were visible cracks in her structure, signs of extreme stress among her species. Commander Sullivan, she said. The Council is grateful for humanity's offer of assistance. High Arbiter, Jake replied formally. Humanity is prepared to provide military support under the following conditions. Human forces will operate under human command. We will coordinate with Council forces, but we will not submit to Council authority. Our ships will engage targets according to human tactical doctrine. Jake could see other Council members in the background of Zextai's transmission. Some of them looked angry at his demands, but Zextai herself just nodded. Your terms are acceptable. When can you begin operations? Our fleets are already moving into position. Admiral Morrison will coordinate overall strategy. But High Arbiter, I want you to understand something. Yes. We're not doing this to rejoin the Council. We're not doing this for a political advantage. We're doing this because it's right. When the crisis is over, humanity will still be independent. Nothing changes that. Zextai was quiet for a moment. Commander, may I ask you something? Of course. Why? Why help us after what we did to you? Jake smiled slightly. Because that's who we are, High Arbiter. Humans don't abandon people in trouble, even if those people have been trouble for us. The transmission ended, and Jake turned to look at the tactical display. Human fleets were moving throughout the galaxy, preparing for battles against an enemy they barely understood. It was dangerous, maybe even suicidal, but it was also the most human thing they could do. Tony, Jake said to his communications officer, send a message to all human commanders. Tell them we're not fighting for the Council or for politics or for territory. We're fighting for the idea that civilized beings don't let entire species get wiped out while they watch. Yes, sir. And if they ask what the plan is. Jake looked out at the stars, where somewhere in the darkness, an invasion fleet was approaching that could destroy everything they had ever known or loved. Tell them we're going to do what humans do best, he said. We're going to adapt, improvise, and win a war that everyone else thinks is impossible to win. The greatest test in human history was about to begin. The invasion fleet arrived on a Tuesday. Captain Amy Foster was commanding the Deep Space Monitoring Station at the edge of human territory when the sensors started screaming. She had been expecting this moment for months, but the reality was more terrifying than anything they had imagined. Report, she called to her sensor operator. Ma'am, I'm reading massive signatures at the galactic edge. The objects we detected months ago, they're not ships. Amy felt her blood turn cold. What are they? They're artificial constructs, each one the size of a small planet. But, Captain, they're not just moving toward the galaxy. They're consuming everything in their path. On the main screen, images from the Deep Space Telescope showed the true horror of what was approaching. The objects were perfect spheres covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. As they moved through space, they absorbed asteroids, gas clouds, and even light itself, growing larger with each passing hour. How many? Amy asked quietly. 17 confirmed, with more signatures appearing at the edge of sensor range. Captain, at their current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies in 6 months. Amy opened a priority channel to Earth Defense Command. This is Outpost 7. Code Black. The invasion has begun. Across the galaxy, the news spread through quantum communication networks faster than light itself. On Earth, President Cooper convened an emergency war council. In council space, High Arbiter Zextai called together what remained of the galactic government. For the first time in 3 centuries, both groups were working toward the same goal: survival. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the tactical center aboard her flagship, watching as reports came in from across the galaxy. The situation was worse than their worst-case scenarios. The Devourer fleet is moving in formation, reported her intelligence officer. They're maintaining perfect spacing and coordination. This isn't random expansion. It's a planned invasion. Jake Sullivan, now serving as the overall commander of the Joint Human Council Forces, studied the tactical displays. The enemy fleet was approaching from multiple directions, clearly intending to surround the galaxy and attack from all sides simultaneously. What's the status of our defenses? He asked. Human fleets are at full readiness, Kate replied. The Council forces are less prepared. Most of their ships use standard formations and tactics. Against an enemy like this, she didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room understood that traditional galactic warfare would be useless against entities that could absorb entire star systems. Sir, called Lieutenant Tony Garcia from the communication station, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. The first Devourer sphere has reached the abandoned Altrian colonies. The main screen showed long-range telescope images of what had once been a thriving solar system. 3 inhabited worlds, 2 space stations, and millions of Altrian refugees who had fled there during the Void Runner attacks. Now there was nothing. The entire system had been consumed, leaving only empty space where stars and planets used to exist. God help us all, someone whispered. Jake straightened his shoulders. He had seen terrible things in his years of service, but nothing like this. An enemy that could eat entire star systems was beyond anything the galaxy had ever faced. All right, people, we knew this wasn't going to be easy. Admiral Morrison, what's our best tactical assessment? Kate activated her personal display. The Devourers are powerful, but they're not invulnerable. Our deep space probes have detected energy signatures that suggest they need time to process what they consume. If we can keep them from settling into a feeding pattern, we might be able to slow them down, Jake finished. What about the Void Runners? Still active, still clearing resistance ahead of the main invasion force. But Commander, we've made an important discovery about them. He displayed chains to show captured Void Runner vessels from recent battles. Close examination revealed something disturbing. The ships weren't just using human technology. They were crewed by humans. Pirates. Jake asked, No, sir. These are humans, but not any we recognize. Our xenobiology teams think they might be from the lost colonies, settlements that disappeared during the expansion era hundreds of years ago. Jake felt sick. The lost colonies were a dark chapter in human history. Early in their expansion into space, several human settlements had simply vanished without a trace. They had been presumed destroyed by pirates or natural disasters. You're saying they survived, and now they're working for the invaders? It looks that way. Sir, if these are descendants of the lost colonies, they might have been enslaved or modified by the Devourers. They could be operating under some form of control. The implications were staggering. Not only were they facing invasion by alien entities, but those entities were using enslaved humans as their advanced scouts. Changes nothing, Jake said firmly. If they're attacking innocent people, we stop them. If they're slaves, we free them. Either way, we fight. Over the next weeks, the combined Human Council fleet engaged the Void Runners in dozens of battles across the galaxy. Each fight revealed more about their enemy, and each revelation was more disturbing than the last. The enslaved humans retained their tactical skills and adaptability, but they fought with a cold efficiency that no free human would ever display. They showed no mercy, took no prisoners, and never retreated. It was like fighting an army of human-shaped machines. But they had one weakness. They couldn't adapt as quickly as free humans could. Colonel Rodriguez Garcia, commanding Marine forces on the front lines, discovered this during the Battle of Kepler Station. His forces had been retreating from a superior Void Runner force when he realized something important. "They're using our old tactics," he told his sergeants over the radio. "Standard assault formations, textbook flanking maneuvers. They fight like humans, but they don't think like humans." Garcia ordered his Marines to abandon their defensive positions and switch to guerrilla tactics. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, they scattered throughout the civilian areas of the station, using hit-and-run attacks that the Void Runners couldn't predict. It worked. The enslaved humans followed their programmed tactics, even when those tactics became counterproductive. Within hours, Garcia's smaller force had destroyed an enemy fleet twice their size. "This is our advantage," Jake announced to the Joint Fleet commanders during their next strategy meeting. "The Void Runners fight like humans, but they think like machines. We can beat them by being more human than they are." The strategy spread throughout the combined fleet. Human commanders began sharing their most unconventional tactics with Council forces, teaching alien species how to fight with human unpredictability. It wasn't easy. Most Council species had spent millennia perfecting rigid military doctrines, but desperation made them willing to learn. The turning point came during the Battle of the Zentari system. The main Devourer fleet had arrived and was preparing to consume the Council's former military headquarters. It should have been a massacre. Instead, it became humanity's greatest victory. Jake commanded the battle from the bridge of the U.S. Liberation, coordinating attacks by ships from dozens of different species. But instead of the traditional formation fighting that the Council preferred, he used tactics that seemed chaotic to outside observers. Human ships darted in and out of Devourer formation, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. Council vessels, following human guidance, abandoned their orderly battle lines and began fighting like a swarm of angry insects. Most importantly, they fought as individuals rather than as a unified fleet, making it impossible for the Devourers to predict their next move, target their power signatures. Kate called over the battle network. "Don't try to destroy them, just keep them from feeding." The strategy worked. The Devourers were powerful, but they depended on being able to absorb energy from their surroundings. The chaotic attack pattern prevented them from establishing the stable feeding connections they needed. One by one, the massive spheres began to withdraw from the battle. For the first time since the invasion began, the Devourers had been forced to retreat. The celebration was brief. Jake knew that this was just one battle in a war that could last for decades, but it proved something important. The invaders could be beaten. 6 months later, Jake stood in the same council chamber where he had announced humanity's withdrawal from galactic civilization. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. "The Devourer threat has been neutralized," he reported to the assembled delegates. "The remaining spheres have withdrawn beyond the galactic edge. Our combined fleets will maintain patrols to ensure they don't return." High Arbiter Zextai, her crystalline body now glowing with health, stood to address the assembly. "Commander Sullivan, the Council owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Your species saved not just our civilization, but all life in the galaxy." Jake nodded politely. "We did what we thought was right, High Arbiter. Nothing more. The Council would like to offer humanity full membership again, with special status and expanded rights." "No, thank you," Jake interrupted. "Humanity appreciates the offer, but we found that we work better as independent allies than as members of any organization." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs, but Jake continued. "However, we would like to propose a new kind of relationship, not membership, but partnership, a voluntary alliance of free species, working together when necessary but governing themselves as they see fit." Over the following months, the Galactic Alliance was formed. It was like the old Council, with its rigid hierarchies and endless bureaucracy. Instead, it was a loose confederation where species could choose their own level of participation. Jake returned to Earth as a hero, but he didn't feel like celebrating. Too many good people had died in the war, both human and alien. The victory had come at a terrible cost. But as he stood in his garden, looking up at the stars, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Humanity had proven that independence didn't mean isolation. They had shown that free people could work together without giving up their freedom. And somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between galaxies, potential enemies would think twice before attacking a civilization that had learned to fight for each other while remaining true to themselves. The galaxy was safe, and humanity was free. It was more than Jake had dared to dream when he walked out of that council chamber years ago. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from conquest, but from having the courage to stand alone when necessary, and the wisdom to stand together when it mattered most.